Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another camera trouble. I'm joking, guys. Welcome back to another video, Ethan's Code Guild. Today we're on day 3. I'm quite excited that we're here, to be fair. Day 3 of the project of the to-do list. And what today is going to look like is quite simple. So what I'm going to try to include for today is we're going to do a mixture of different things. I'm going to break the video down to sections. For sections 1, we'll cover the front end. From what you've seen last time, there's been some significant front end upgrades. We've used a mixture of technologies and tools to do that, which I will explain. In addition, we've also used and started all of our other JavaScript requests for our database and for our adapt service and our task management service to handle. So that'll be interesting. I will show you how that looks as well. We have also added some validation so that while it's still in its phase of being kind of developed, I can have a lot of options to ensure I know what's going on with the task. I've also made good use of alerts so that I can just see how it looks before and after the effect takes action. And you'll see what that looks like in a minute. And what we've also gonna go into and add and talk about is a JavaScript request. And I thought, as a bit of a change, we'll dive a little bit more into GitHub and specifically how I'm using it, because I have quite a bit to explain with that one. Because when I started my development journey, I thought GitHub was absolutely pointless. But the more and more you build projects, I think, and when more and more things go wrong throughout that development cycle, you start to slowly realize why it's not as bad as it seems. So we'll go into that. We also as well got a bit of an outro and a thanks at the end. Okay, so I'll leave a chance for you guys to ask any questions, any comments, anything you want to do, want to ask me, or potentially ask each other. You know, it's an open community. I've said this before. We're all here to help each other, but it's an opportunity for all of you guys to reach out and let me know what you think, what you'd like to see next, what you'd like to see better, and hopefully we can all help each other learn, which is what I'm aiming to do. I do this because it's a passion of mine, and I'm excited to see what me and you guys can build in the future. So, for the start, what's changed? So I've already mentioned the main one really is the changes to the front end, more the JavaScript request side, okay, and also the way in which things are altered on the front end and how that data is altered and displayed. From what you've seen previously, it changes it in a very basic bullet point structure. There's not a lot there. Now, the main change that we're going to start off with is going to be the front end stuff. So in order to do this, I thought, what better way of doing it than first to show you what it looks like, and then we'll dive into more detail about how it actually does this and how this is different what we've done before. So, brilliant. This is our front end. Now you'll notice specifically we're using what's called Bootstrap. Now Bootstrap, for those of you who haven't heard it before, because this is only something I very recently discovered, essentially is a bit of software that allows you to have pre-built templates of CSS and to put them directly into the code. Probably one of the reasons why it's called Bootstrap, because you just strap it on. Now it's different to CSS, so for someone like me, guys, I'll be honest with you, I've said this before, I'm not a creative person. I'm afraid, I'm not a creative person at all. I'm a very methodical person. So for me, when it came to CSS and styling, I've never been particularly good at it. I am well equipped enough to be able to do a basic front end, okay, with the basic things there. I'm not really that interested in the animation side, and it's not something I necessarily thrive in. So it's something which I've just took what is needed and I've used it for the current situation. And Bootstrap helps remove a lot of that, going through and doing all the CSS styling sheets and everything else, because it just uses classes essentially and uses that class attribute to be able to modify what everything looks like with its pre-built options. Now, I'm not necessarily going to walk through each of these. The main reason I'm not going to walk through each of them is purely because I've not necessarily been that bothered by Bootstrap. It's not particularly an interest of mine. What you'll find I have done, as well as I've leveraged my knowledge of AI, so I am a firm believer in AI is really going to be a big thing for the future when it comes to development. And I think for a lot of people, the creative side is certainly something that's getting more challenging. As we move into each new website, new era, you'll see there's multiple different people who do multiple different things with their creativity. And if you're not very creative, then you've got to find ways to plug that skill. If you don't necessarily have the knowledge or capacity, or you want to reserve your knowledge and capacity for something else, then you've got to find tools that can help build the bridge. For me, it's using AI tools. Now, what tool have I used in order to do this? There's quite a few. You can find quite a few online. The main one I personally use is using ChatGPT 5 that's built directly into IntelliJ. Now, why am I doing it that way? Well, usually with ChatGPT, unfortunately, when you're trying to kind of go through code, it's not a good idea to go through that kind of code with ChatGPT separately, especially if you start inputting things and you accidentally put a password or something like that. So on a security standpoint, it can be easier to do it directly in IntelliJ. Now, it is a feature with IntelliJ Ultimate, so it's not something necessarily everyone pays for. But what I would say is, it's a way of being able to learn code as well. A lot of my coding experience has helped with using ChatGPT, because I think for some people, especially if your brain's wired a certain way, you're not going to learn through the same context as someone else. So the way someone else explains something to you, or even me, for example, might not make sense to you, but it could make sense to someone else. And ChatGPT can help you reword the information to suit you. And that's exactly what we've done here. So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you, and we'll boot up and I'll show you what it looks like. I have got this up already and prepared from earlier, so I'm just going to drag this along. There we go. And you will see the difference. So we've still got the checklist game, still got the task name, we're just in grey. Okay, it is very bland, but as I said, guys, you know, choose what you want to do. Most developer jobs, from what I've seen and mentors I haven't spoke to, they all say the same thing, which is essentially usually doing one or the other, and sometimes you'll need a minimum amount of knowledge in one field. So in this instance, that's the front end. Still got the same sections. This is where it really doesn't look as different as beforehand. You've got task name, task type, task level description. You can add the task. Okay. You've also still got the task name. Okay. You've still got the tasks available. Still, I've put loaded from backend there as a bit of a helper. You've still got the tasks available. Okay. You've still got the option to remove a task. The edit task now comes in a drop down, so you get to select the attribute you want to update, and you get to update that using a value by clicking the button. That's one way of doing it. One of the main different ones as well that you'll notice is when you go to add a task, I have made changes into what that looks like on the back-end side. Now, how have I done that safely? Well, we've used the test to do that, and we will go through what that looks like. What I will go through for it as well, however, for you, is to give you a quick demonstration, because I thought for you guys that might be quite valuable. So we're going to do a new task, make video on interfaces. Something that is coming up. If any of you know what an interface is, drop it down in the comments below, let me know, I'll be very impressed. Task type, editing. Task level, let's go for an 8, level 8, shall we? Task description, edit video of me doing interfaces, make sure to keep under 35 minutes. There we go. Interfaces, there we go, excuse my spelling, I have dyslexia. So you created your task, you will then add it. It comes up with tasks not added. Now I've got a feeling why I think that's come up, okay? So I am just going to quickly check that, 1 second. Looks like we got a debug session coming, guys. Now usually I would edit this and change it, but I've already said I am not doing that because I think it's helpful for you guys to see how one might decide to do this. So in this instance, method not allowed, go to SQJSON response, log, added. Now I got a feeling it might be because of the length of characters. So what I'm gonna do, quickly remove that. Let's see, let's go again. Okay, so we can see, guys, if you don't know what I'm doing, I will just explain. So one really helpful feature that most browsers have now, and I use Edge primarily, is what you call breakpoints. You can do the same thing with your code in Java, so when you're in IntelliJ, but essentially it allows you to make the code go completely, well, completely stop at a certain stage, and you can on your own accord progress stage by stage. So in this instance, when it comes to this function, which seems to be the problem, I've asked it to stop. So it knows it's got the video and interfaces, it knows it's got task name and task level, got task description. Okay, so one thing we can do is see whether it's been running. So should we have a look and see whether it's running? My instance, it probably is not, but we'll soon see. Oh, so it is running. So, run the tests, it's got all the right variables. Recently I changed it to have a task owner section as well. On this instance, it is got it, but at the minute, it's got it as non-nullable, which is the reason why it's not working. How can I tell that? Well, when you go onto your table, 1 second, onto your Docker, and my build, which I'll bring across now, you will see for the tables, we've got the task owner as not null. Now, what does that mean? That means that the task, okay, it cannot be null. So what am I going to do to change that? Well, what I'm going to do to change that for now is I am going to try to get rid of it. And then we'll try to go from there. So, quickly save that. I'm going to give it another go and run it. As you don't know, this is just using Docker Compose, which essentially builds the container. So in this case, we're going to put it up. And just FYI guys, this might completely break on me. Key thing with these things is to stay calm. I can safely say, and I think everyone else who's done coding can say the same thing, you enter moments like this where you build it, you spend ages building it, and it fucking breaks. Excuse my language, but it's true. And it breaks. The key is to accept the fact that things break. You can't do anything about it, I'm afraid. And when it does break, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, guys. All you gotta do is take a breath, you go again, and we see what happens. Because that's all you can do. So in this instance, it is slightly going wrong because of my image and my Docker. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna quickly close it, and then we're just going to do it again. Boom. As you don't know, this is my Docker, essentially. Just open it again for us. Apologies. Other benefit in times like these. No break. Well, we got that database is ready to use. That is what we want. Alright, so now they've got database ready to use, we will rerun my thingy, my to-do list, and then we will see what happens. Now the question you need to ask yourselves is, will this work? The honest answer to that question is, I don't know. But we will see. Server run. That means it is running. So then what we will do, guys, we will try it again. Give it a little bit of go. Oh, spicy. So we're going to use the other task. So we're going to do clean room, task 7 level. Clean all the dishes need to be done. All the dishes. So now that we've done it, we'll give it a go. Task added. Boom. So you can see, look, task has been added. Troubleshooting. Yeah, I wouldn't worry though, guys. Sometimes you get that, and if you do, there's nothing wrong with taking a break. As I said, if I get errors like this on the channel, I've already kind of committed to the fact that I'm not editing them out, because I think it is really important for you to be able to see what the debugging looks like, and sometimes you might see me get a bit frustrated, but that's still important. So, either way, this is what it looks like now. So we'll add the task on, which is fantastic, okay? You can also, if you want to, edit edit per task. So in this instance, you can see it's got task name there. It's like a search bar function, but I haven't worked that out yet. I'm just thinking about it. So what we can do for the README, for example, if I want to edit the task, I can edit an attribute. Let's go for name, and then we're going to change the name to read readme upgrades. Call it readme upgrades. Task updated. And there we go, guys. You can see it. Readme upgrades is all there. Alright. So that's it for that one. Now, what we will do with that... I don't think I've got that working yet. We can certainly give it a go. No, I haven't. No, because I still need to do the... Yeah, right. I haven't done that bit. Sorry, guys. I was thinking. I am still going to do a search function there. Now, why would I want to do a search function? Because it's awesome. And because it's just a good chance to give it a go. But with that being the case, if we keep going, this is all it essentially does. You can remove tasks as well. Task removed. It takes off on the database as well. That's pretty much it for the front end. What we're going to do, we're going to implement this search feature at some point. I just haven't got around to doing that yet. Okay. Clear tasks, another thing. I want to be able to do it where it clears all the tasks, not just the one. I'm not done that yet either. And we're also looking at doing a login page as well, guys. Now, why am I going to do a login page? To do Java Web Tokens. Now, the reason I want to do that is for those of you who haven't seen that before, it's just authentication. I've not stepped into authentication at all, so I thought it'd be a really good chance for me to give that a go, and also for you guys to see it too. So you'll be able to see what I did, and you can let me know what your thoughts are. So please stay tuned for that video. That's it though, and that's it for the front end. For the Bootstrap, I will just show you, there is actually, and you can find this, believe it or not, Bootstrap. There is actually a Bootstrap cheat sheet, so you can find this directly on Bootstrap. Now, what this essentially does, it's not this one, there's another one I found that's a bit easier. Here we go. Brilliant, this is the one. What this essentially does is it allows you to use essentially a cheat sheet, and this is essentially what I use, to be honest with you, to be able to style elements, to do select buttons and collapsible buttons, to do ranges, validation, all sorts of stuff. So this is a way of you being able to use Bootstrap as a library and being able to use it to shorten your time when it comes to the front end. Now, that's for those of you who maybe don't enjoy the front end. I would say if you did enjoy the front end, it's still worth doing, because it can help you with things that maybe you don't want as much control over, and it can make you a bit more efficient. So by all means, have a look, guys. I will try to leave a link of that one in the comments below, and to give you a chance to have a look at it. So the next stage was requests. Now for requests, that's the thing that's changed the most with this. So I'm going to start off from top to bottom. So what have we done, and how does my code translate the information that we get from the services back into understandable data in JavaScript to then display it on the front end? Now this does this really using three key things, three key parts. One is what's called async functions and promises. The other one is what's called DOM elements, that's document object model. For those of you who don't know, I will explain what that is, and I will also put a link in the video if I can. And the last part, which is also quite important, is actually using selectors, which essentially mean I'm able to select parts of the data, and you'll see how that's going to work in just a little bit. What I thought I'd start off with is the basic requests, and we'll do this from top to bottom because this is pretty much new. So we've got the window on load function to get tasks. Now what does that mean? That means when this code runs, this task is what's created and run. Now you're probably wondering what the async means. So what async essentially means, when you have code, if you have code that runs, it will run typically in that order, okay, and it will just carry on with each bit of code. The problem is there's some things like a request, for example, or a calculation, where it might not happen straight away and it needs to have a result from something else. How does JavaScript get around that? How does JavaScript know, right, I'm going to stop and wait until I get the result of this calculation or of this service or of this thing? It uses async promises. Async and await. Now how that works is, the async function just lets Java know that along here, somewhere along here, there is going to be a stage where it has to await something, and that's what it's there for. Okay? Now you can do this without having async at the front. In terms of how you do that, I will show you, not just yet, but I will show you, and there is a way of doing it. But most of the time, if you've got a function that has an await in there, or maybe a few, it can be easier to have a sync, okay? Now, the differences between the two, if you're wondering, well, why don't I just do it directly here, why have a sync and await versus doing it directly in the method, is because a sync and await can use more CPU storage versus just simply doing it directly in there, which I'll show you. However, a sync and await, if you've got multiple await requests, that's where it can be easier, because it's not having to do that each time. In this scenario, you can see it logs on the console getting tasks, and it uses the try statement. We're using a try because if anything goes wrong, which is what happened the first 76 times to give it a go, the first 76 times it goes wrong, it will catch the error, and it catches the error and displays information to me, which you'll see, and that will help to troubleshooting. So, what it will do first of all is it will get a URL. Now that URL is the local port that we're running the service off of, okay, which is where our backend runs, the controller name, and then the controller root. So as I said before in the previous videos, the controller is almost like a traffic warden. So that essentially tells it it's at this motorway, you got to come off of this junction and take the exit of this. Okay, so it's literally like a car journey. What it will then do is it will have a response. Now that response is going to fetch this URL. And you're probably wondering, well, what does it fetch? Well, it fetches the result within the getTasks function of my controller, okay? Which in this case is a list of tasks, all right, from the database. It has the await there because that's not going to happen straight away. The getTasks has to do things. It has to go through and make sure it validates. It has to interact with the database as well. It's not something that just happens instantly. An example of what might happen instantly, if I said response equals 5 plus 5, it happens instantly, it's there. It doesn't need to await on something else. Another example would be if I asked it to find an element in my HTML. It doesn't have to wait for something else, it's doing that. The URL is something it's having to await a response for. That's why it's there. Hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, by all means let me know. Following on from that, you've got the data. Now when it returns the information from the fetch, okay, it will return it, okay, as JSON data. And then in order to manipulate that data, because it'll be just raw, we use the await, so wait until it's done, response.json. So extract the JSON data out of the response. And it stores it as data. Now once it's done that, it will then move on to getting the task list DOM element. Okay. Now I'm going to explain what this is. Now this is probably the more interesting one because we've not talked about this before on the channel. So the DOM stands for Document Object Model. What the DOM essentially is the hierarchy of elements. So for example, when you're building a house, you have the main foundations of the house. That's an element. You then might have the walls that go on top of the foundation. That's another element. You might then have the windows, another element. And you can see how it just keeps going. But everything is linked to the other thing in one way, shape or form. Now how do we get and understand what each part is? Well, there's different ways you can do it. You can identify it by certain attributes. You can use what's called query selectors, which I think I'd use in this one to be fair, which essentially check for a set of criteria that you give it to find HTML elements that match. And you can also use IDs, which is what we've done. Now the IDs are unique to each DOM element, hence why we're doing it this way, because I know then that it won't end up choosing something else. In this instance, we got the task list DOM element, which is the task list display. So that is the section that contains all of the tasks available. Now when we first load this, that box of the task list is empty until the request is sent. So how do we then populate that box with all of those tasks? Well, first of all, we start off by emptying it. to completely nothing to make sure. That's once again for the safety side. We do that by taking the inner HTML. Now, inner HTML and inner values are two different things, or value, for example, or inner text is another one. Inner text will give you the plain text. You can edit it to be plain text. So this might be a P tag, which is a paragraph. So you might have that as, say, change that P tag to have the inner text of hello. So it will say hello. You can have the value to change. That's particularly useful for things such as buttons or drop-down menus, where you might want the value of the drop-down selected to change once someone has selected it. You can also have the HTML, which says within this block of task lists, I want you to change all of the HTML in that to nothing. That's what the equals does. After it's done that and it's wiped the slate clean, it then goes through to select, well, using what's it? This is the problem, guys. Now I'll use it. A loop. There we go. I swear, I'm losing the plot today. It uses a loop to essentially go from the first index of the data returned to the very last one, and to then create tasks based, well, populate the task list display with those tasks using that data. Now it does that first by getting the current task equal to whatever index we're currently on, and then what it does is in the task list display element, in the inner HTML, it will add within that the equivalent of what follows. That's different from saying equals. The reason why we do plus equivalent and not just equals in this one is if I change that to equals, which believe me I did at one point, it will then just keep changing it to whatever's next. So every time it iterates, it will change what's in there into the next bit of data, then the next bit of data. It won't add them concurrently, so you end up seeing all the data. The plus equivalent does, so that when it runs, for example, say the first iteration goes, when it goes for it again, it will know that it will ask the inner HTML add plus what's already in there, the equivalent of this. Now, what does it add each time? Well, it adds a div tag first of all, okay? The container MD bit, container medium bit, that's to do with Bootstrap. That's to do with dead space and what it uses to help map things out in the layout. I'm not going to dive too much into that. Within that, it uses a list tag. And in that list, it has the following data. It has the current task ID. It then has the a P tag with the task name of the current task name. Then it has the task description of the current task description. Then it has the task type as the current task type. Then it has the task level as the current task level. And then following from that, it has another container with the option to remove the task as a button, okay? With another option of being able to edit the task with the button. And then if they click the edit task, it'll bring up the menu, which will be a task attribute to update, followed by a select menu with 4 options. They can choose what they want to update, followed by another label, okay, which is a task attribute label, along with a new input tag for a replacement value, followed by a button to actually update that task. The following tags are just ending tags, so they just close it off. Now that is all it adds, and it does that for each task, okay, which is why you see what it does at the front. Now, one key thing for those of you who don't know, because this took me a while to think about, to be fair, and required quite a bit of research, and it can help you, especially if you're dealing with something relating to inner HTML where you're adding things dynamically. When I started to do this, at the start, I did the data, and I used the index of the data. That is certainly something you can do. The difficulty you might find you'll have is when you're adding a HTML element, and when you're adding that element and you want methods that have or take arguments, if the thing that they're taking the argument for is in relation to the data that it's populating, you can use the following selector, which uses a dollar symbol, curly brackets, the data of which you're talking about, which in this case is my current task, which is what it's using, followed by the attribute in which you're asking for, and then it will populate that in for you, regardless of what data that is. Now the reason you might want to do that is, in my case, the remove task, the bring task, and all of that stuff, all of that relies on one specific thing, the task ID, which is validated when it gets sent back to the database. But that is the thing that all the methods latch onto as the primary key, so it knows when it's looking for a task, it's got to have this ID. They can't just get the task from Shirley name. They can't just edit a task from Shirley name. They need the ID, okay? Now the reason you do that is you can have security for that ID to keep it safe, okay? Which is what we'll be working on, and we will work on it when we start to look at the Java authentication, web authentication. Along with that, when we also look at the login page and stuff, that's also what we're going to use, and similar to what we will use. Sort of some other bits and bobs for you guys to see. That's all it does to populate the tasks. It logs the data afterwards, so you can see, just like we had prior, what the data is. Probably thinking, why am I logging the data? Well, if we log the data and we log it as data, then all it essentially allows it to do is show us if something went wrong, what it thinks it has. Sometimes when it tries to populate something on the front end, it won't necessarily show you what has actually been returned. To find out what's actually been returned, what you have to do is to be able to log, just to make sure. If there's an error, for example, it will catch the error, okay, and it logs that error. Now all that comes back to the troubleshooting. Next one, update task handler. Once again, using the task ID. That is a method that's used just up here, so you can see it. Takes the ID, okay, it gets the attribute to update, which will be the task attribute to update, a little bit of an underscore, followed by, once again, the task ID, because that's what it's going to be dependent on, as to know which one are we updating. Okay, and which drop-down selection is it? We can find out what the drop-down selection is by being smart and using that selector to have, in this scenario you can see it, an ID of whatever it is, and then a unique identifier using that selector. So it can work for you guys, and it might be a good idea if you want to use it in your own code, go for it. Once it's done that for both, it gets the value, because that's not what's being displayed, we want the actual value of that HTML element. And then once it's got the value, it will await the result of this function, which is update task. Now the reason we still say await, okay, is we don't want it to just proceed and end the function. We want it to await until the update task is finished for it to then proceed. Okay. The next one is the bring up task edit menu. For those of you who don't know, this is a real simple template. I use it quite a bit. All this does is help you to be able to select things. Sorry guys, I'm getting a bit thirsty. I do find that because along the videos you get a bit thirsty. But we'll go through this one. So you'll see we've got current style. Now all HTML elements have styling. This is what the Bootstrap does. But as I said before, having a bit of knowledge in an area which you're not necessarily an expert at can help. In this scenario, we're using a query selector. So that takes the document, uses the query selector, it selects the class. Oh wait a minute. Check this one. 1 second. I need to remember that. I can't remember it. 1 second. I had this in my head and then I lost it. Oh. And then we lost everything. Oh god. 1 second. Okay, there we go. Right, we're good. So, let me quickly borrow this one. 1 second. Just need to make sure of this. Well, to figure out. Brilliant, yeah. Right. Thanks guys, sorry, I need a bit of time to figure that one out. I had it, but I just thought I better just double check that before something goes terribly wrong. We don't need that one either, it is this one we need. So let's get back to this first of all, shall we? So, for this one, it gets the class or any classes that have the edit task menu, okay? Then it checks to see if the value, okay, is the same as the task ID, of which we have from this up here, okay, as the argument. Now, once it's got that, it will then get the style of that and the display style that it's in. Now, I'll show you how this works in practical terms. So it looks, for example, if we do it manually, for anything with the edit task menu. So it looked through, say it had multiple, it would look through, see, there we go, there we go, edit task menu, okay? And then it sees the value ID. So if I said to see if the, if I clicked on to bring up the menu for task ID 7, then it'll go, okay, this has the class of edit task menu, brilliant. Oh, and it's got the value of 7. So this is the specific element of which I'm now bringing up the task menu. It does that by just changing it from block into none, and from none into block. Now the reason it does it that way is so you can hide it and open it dynamically. So if it's already visible, then it'll just change it to none. If it's not visible, then it will then change it into block. Now what could you shorten about this? Well, one thing you could shorten about it is to actually change it, instead of using the query selector again, you could simply change it to current style. Now have I only just realized this is the case? Yes. Would I fix it? Yes. Am I going to fix it now? No. Because it's not a bug, we will fix that because it could be more efficient. Following on from that, it will then return that, okay, and finish it. It will bring up afterwards. It doesn't actually need to return it, so we're going to remove that. That one we can remove because that's unnecessary. Whereas the other thing is more of an improvement. Once it's done that, it'll then add the task. It adds a task by getting all the values, so the task name, level, description, all of that stuff, okay? From what we've entered at the top of the screen. You saw me do that earlier on in the video. If you haven't, I suggest you go back, you'll see it there. It then gets the URL, goes to the road of the task management controller down the avenue of create task. Same thing, it does a fetch. Now this is slightly different in the sense of, at the top, when I showed you, it was very simple, okay, it just did the JSON data, and it didn't have to send any arguments or anything like that. For this one, it has two aspects. It has the URL that you can see, okay, that's not changed, but it also has the package afterwards, or what's also known as a payload. In this case, there's a couple of things you can add on here, okay? The first one is the method. So this method is post, that's what the backend is expecting, and that's what we're trying to do. The headers, okay, that's content type. Now headers can have multiple things. It could have elements of security on there, so Java Web Tokens, for example. I imagine there's probably a lot of other things you can have on there as well, but it's not about the data, the headers part, it's just about any extra things that you might want to add on. How it works is you put in what it is in string, and then it's got application/JSON. What that means is it's JSON data that it's going to get, okay, from my application. The body, now this is what the actual data within the payload is going to stringify, okay, in JSON, the task object model, okay, and it builds that task object model that you saw in the other videos using all of the attributes that we've collected here. So starting from here up there, the task name, the task level, task type, task description, all of those attributes are all pulled from that and used to build a task object model that is stringified in JSON and sent to the database. That is how the database is then able to extract the data on the other side, okay, and is able to use it to add it to the database. JSON is a very common data type. All JSON is literally a data format. Okay, it's similar to XML. You can also use that as well. That's extensible markup language. If you don't know what that is, I encourage you to have a look. Okay, you'll be able to see it online. But JSON is a very common one. Now, why does it need to have JSON? The reason it needs to have JSON is most computers and most services and everything else, when you send data across from one to the other, how the data originally is packaged is usually different. Now there needs to be a language which both can understand so it can travel through. An example being is, say if you spoke Russian and I spoke Japanese, neither of us, say if I didn't understand Russian, you didn't understand Japanese, we need either a translator which can speak both languages or another language, which is what this is doing, say English if we both speak that, to be able to communicate. Okay, that's what this JSON does. Speaks the language for both, and then either side, when they understand, can convert it to their own language for manipulation. That's all it does. It checks to see if the response status is 200. Now the reason why it does that is HTTP processes have status codes. So that can vary. Some of them can mean, for example, an error in connection. Some of them can mean an invalid argument, internal service error, things like that. You saw one earlier, it said internal service error 500. 500 is service code. You can find most of those codes online. They're really useful tools, guys. I suggest if you haven't got them, then it can be really good to troubleshoot. Once again, the whole point when it comes to troubleshooting, I think, that makes it most clear is to gather as much information as you can, and tools like status codes are there for you to be able to get as much information as you can. Once it does that, it does an alert as well to let you know task added. Now the reason it lets me have the alert first is because then once I click OK to the alert, afterwards it will then get the tasks. It does that purely because I can see what it looked like before, so that afterwards when it tries to get all the tasks, including the ones added, I can see if there's a difference, which is what we want to have. If it isn't for any reason, then it alerts me that the task isn't added, okay, but it will always log the response status, the status text, so not just the code, what actually the status code means, and then the JSON data that has been returned. Once again, helpful for troubleshooting. For the next part, we've got remove task ID. Now that one is similar to the other ones, and it uses a similar kind of thing, uses a URL, okay, same thing, using the async and await, same thing using the URL, and then the method package, uses delete this one, okay guys. You will find a bit of a hint for you. When it goes through, if it's saying a method not allowed or something similar, then you can find that's something to do with your configuration on your backend side, okay? It'll be worth having a look at. Sometimes it's not necessarily related to that, because I've had it where it says that, but it's actually related to the data that goes back and forth, and related to how the data is translated either on the back end or the front end. I would suggest checking them, okay? But if you're not sure, you can always just work through guesses and try to do more and more logging until eventually you can highlight the point of the problem. This is also the same reason why you do tests. Earlier when you saw that problem went wrong, I ran the test. Why did I run the test? I want to make sure that it's nothing to do with my actual service logic. In that instant, it wasn't to do with my service logic. If it's not to do with that, then you know it's to do with the formatting of the data or the constraints and rules of the data. In that instance it was because of how their database was set up. Okay? Does the same thing with the response. Okay, I try to keep it consistent, and the alert, okay, and they get tasks. It also does the same thing with log and everything. It does the same thing with the update and task, okay guys. This one uses the ID, the category to update, and the replacement value to do it. Does the same thing as it says on the tin. Difference is it stringifies it, okay, and will stringify it based on all those three arguments. And that's it. And so far, that's all we've done. So that is all that aspect does. It doesn't do anything else, okay? It's fairly simple, fairly self-explanatory, but that is pretty much all it does. Now, moving on from that, if we have a look, I'm just going to see what next we've got to do. Yes, it was GitHub. So that is it for the to-do list and the JavaScript. Now, you really won't see, guys, very much to do with the kind of back-end side today. That's really not changed very much, guys. I'll be honest with you, I've got lots of comments, and that was something I was going to talk about, but I have got lots of comments at the minute. The reason I've done that is because features that I'm going to add, to make sure I know where I need to add them, I'm taking comments and using them to my advantage. I would also just probably mention, guys, okay, that you can see with these and with a lot of what I've done so far, I am going to look at improving it, okay, with the authentication side, but I've done this as an incremental way, or as what's commonly known as the agile working method, which is doing kind of blocks of tasks, okay, and running them as sprints, so that if I need to change anything, which I can, it's not as hard to do. With that being the case, guys, that's it for the coding side today. Thank you. What I was also going to show you is my GitHub. Now, I was going to show my GitHub. I wasn't sure about this at the start, I'll be honest with you. The reason I decided to show the GitHub, okay, is purely because I wanted to show you what the GitHub can help you do. So, wait there, 1 second for me. Brilliant. For obvious reasons, I'm not going to show you when I log in, because that's my password and stuff. So this is my GitHub. Now you guys have probably already seen this, okay? I've already done the README, by the way. I'm still working on this. This is what it's going to be, and this is what the use of it is. Now what I would say, guys, for those of you who aren't necessarily aware, we do have what we call branches here, okay? Now when we go and view all branches, it's just going to be the deleted ones as well, actually. No, it might not. I think it's because I deleted them. Now, most of you, if you're relatively new to coding, probably heard of GitHub, not heard too much about it. GitHub is a way of managing version control. So, for example, you saw my improvements. For each one, okay, I'm on a different branch. So at the minute, I'm on the front-end feature branch, I think it is, which is there, not remotely yet, but just locally, and that is something I'm working on to manage my progress. The reason why we use branches, and the reason why I can help guys, is if ever something breaks, okay, it means that you can find out why prior to pulling it into your working code. Your main code, which is what this is, the main branch, that's the main version. So this is the kind of the finished product, so to speak. Not the finished product, but the main product. When you do a branch, so you might want to add one called, I don't know, security feature as an example. You will do your work on the security feature in that branch, and then when you've done your work on that branch, you will then merge it into the main line of code, the main version. Now that's to help if there's any conflicts, if there's any errors, okay? And if there was any errors, it means you're not merging those errors into it. It means you can test it and fix it prior. You can also have reviewers, so people who review your code before you try to merge it. That can be useful. So that's what usually big organizations do. You won't just be able to merge things into the main version yourself. You have to get through authorization, smoke testing, things like that, and integration testing where it tests it amongst all the other services. But it's a way of keeping your code safe. What I will say, guys, is I'm thinking of doing a video a bit of a deep dive on setting up your own GitHub and also how you can use it. If that's something that you think would be interesting, guys, please I ask you to let me know in the comments down below, and I'll certainly look at doing it. It's not something I've necessarily considered doing, but I am going to try to roll out more tips and tricks videos and more kind of smaller, lower level, not as conceptual, more technical videos for you guys that are only 5-10 minutes, because I know these ones are a bit longer. So by all means, let me know what you think, and besides that, guys, that is it. That is what we've done so far. We're going to be working on the code for the security and the login page at some point either later on by next week or the week after. I also plan to have an interfaces video I'm going to try to get up. I don't know how long it's going to take me, but I do want to plan that one because interfaces are really, really useful. But yeah, you will see that. I'm going to try to do it by Friday if I can next week. But I have got Battlefield 6 coming out, guys, which I don't know about you guys, but I'm excited for, so I need to worry about that as well. And with that being the case, if you did have any questions, okay, as always, let me know down in the comments below. Love the channel. I love you all. Thank you as well for supporting me, okay, and supporting us through this journey. I really, really appreciate it, and I really, really do wish all of you guys the best luck in your careers, in your development, okay, and at the same time, I'm also very thankful for all of you guys watching. This really helps me learn, okay, and being able to have a community that we can build, I think, is really valuable. So I will see all of you guys in the next video. Take care, guys. Bye bye.